Anyone know this band? This is One Republic. They're a pop rock type band that has a song called Connection, the chorus to which is Can I Get a Connection? That's not really part of the sermon, it was just too nifty to pass up. When I was a child, I was perfectly happy to play by myself. I would run outside barefoot into the yard. Growing up in the country, the yard was all mine. There would be no one within eyesight to intrude, and I learned early on not to cross the road without listening hard for the cars that you could hear coming from a mile away, rattling along on the gravel. In that yard, I would mix up a magical potion, fight intruders from the bushes, win every war, stop every fight, save countless lives, kindly and humbly telling them that it was my pleasure. My imagination was all I needed to keep me going. No community playmates necessary. All the thoughts and ideas were already in my head, spilling out in a river of enchanting and highly fulfilling playtime. There was a real joy to playing by myself. It was nice to get to play any part in my dramas without challenge. It was highly fulfilling and all I needed for hours and hours at a time. I was able to be the perfect me. Anything I wanted to be. I was always the perfect hero, the perfect cat, the perfect person. I had all the answers. I was truly perfect because there was no one around to disagree. If I got angry, it was just the right amount of anger for the situation, and if I made a mistake, well, it was a deliberate one that actually turned out for the better. The thoughts and feelings of my imaginary playmates were easy to keep track of, and they either always agreed with me or ended up learning that I was right. It's like an episode of the TV show Black Mirror. In the episode, a man makes clones of thinking and feeling human beings that he stores online. They are then forced to serve him as the crew of his spaceship. The irony is that part of serving him is a mandate to disagree with him sometimes, like about whether or not he can win a certain battle. That way, when he wins, he's able to say, "I told you so." When there's only one person controlling things, well, things have a tendency to go just perfectly for them. As a child, my games always went my way. It's easy to be perfect when I'm all by myself. But when I hung out with other people, then things got more difficult. Can you believe it? Those kids wanted to be heroes too. Suddenly, my ideas might not be considered the best ones. Suddenly, my ideas might not be the ones that got picked. Suddenly, I had to share space, both literally and metaphorically, with other people. Suddenly, it wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what we wanted. And astonishingly, what we wanted wasn't always what I wanted. Sometimes I was very sure that what we wanted was not the best way to do it. Why couldn't these little kids see that their way was wrong and that what I wanted was best? What I wanted was always best when I played alone. Now, I'd like to say that this mentality has disappeared as I have grown. And to a certain extent it has, but of course it hasn't entirely. Adults are kind of just big kids. And we absolutely still have a tendency to think that our way is best. It's easy to be an adult when I'm by myself. I love it. Being alone is not lonely for me, especially now that my work is almost entirely with other people. Nowadays, on days off, I generally follow in Harry Potter's footsteps, saying, "I'll be in my bedroom, making no noise and pretending I don't exist." It's easy for me to be a good person in those moments. The bathroom doesn't really need to be cleaned that badly. Yeah, that person was being super weird when they did that thing. Clearly, my approach would have been much more effective. When we're alone, our thoughts have a tendency to be all about what we want and need, and we are the appropriate star of our thoughts. As the star, we generally think we're always right, that the way we are doing things is best, and that nothing really needs to change. When other people enter our lives, a kind of magic happens. Suddenly, we start thinking beyond ourselves. Suddenly, the bathroom actually does need to be cleaned. Suddenly, the other person's idea is maybe not quite so ludicrous and might actually have some merit. Suddenly, we see things from a new and tricky perspective. If you think this isn't the case and doesn't happen, or at least not to you, then just think about whether or not you clean your space before you have visitors. It's not easy. This is a difficult thing to do, taking other people into account. I do not like cleaning, whether it's my bathroom or my mind. I don't like sharing. I don't like putting other people's needs before mine, and I think that's healthy. If I put everyone's needs before mine all the time, then I'll quickly lose my sense of me. Having a good sense of what I want, and being willing and enthusiastic about being a little greedy sometimes, is a good thing. And the child who plays alone all the time is not a happy child. I think most humans have experienced being bullied, or ostracized, or left out of a group. It hurts. It feels terrible when the other children won't let you play with them. It can be unbearably lonely when you don't have other people to be with. Loneliness hurts. And it seems to me that more and more people are experiencing higher and higher levels of loneliness. More and more people have few or no close friends. More and more people report feeling crippling loneliness. It seems like loneliness is everywhere. When I was doing research for this sermon, I wanted to make sure that this loneliness I perceived in our culture wasn't all in my head, and of course it's not. 46% of Americans report feeling sometimes or always lonely. Only half say that they have an extended in-person conversation or hang out with family members daily. It's not exaggerating to call loneliness in the United States an epidemic. I mean, if 46% of people had a physical illness, it would definitely be an epidemic. Think about it for a second. If 46% of people in the United States had swine flu, we would lose our minds trying to fix it. Billions of dollars would get poured into a vaccine, and huge government agencies would have tons of clinics set up with antivirals at the ready. There is no such move to end loneliness. Now you might be thinking, but Robin, swine flu could kill people. No one's ever died from loneliness. Then again, maybe you're not thinking that. Y'all are smart cookies. Because of course people have died from loneliness. Most people, at the very least, recognize that teenagers are higher risk for risky behavior in an attempt to be accepted by their peers, which is to avoid and combat loneliness, and that they are higher risk for suicide if they don't succeed. But they're not the only ones. A study I found showed evidence that people who feel socially isolated or live alone are at about 30% higher risk of early death. The lead author of the study, Julianne Holt-Lunstad, says that the harmful effects of loneliness are akin to the harm caused by smoking, obesity, or alcohol misuse. Let's pause there for a moment. That's a lot to take in. The effects of chronic loneliness pose the same risk to your health as smoking or alcohol abuse. I think about a passage in a book by one of my favorite authors, one of those ones I was reading while I played alone as a youngster. In Tamara Pierce's book, The Will of the Empress, two siblings are talking. One has been in a war, and he is suffering from and silently concealing PTSD. The other has just found out about his nightmares and flashbacks and has advised him to see a mind healer. He objects, saying approximately, "What am I, a child who needs to go crying to mommy because I had a bad dream?" his sibling calmly replies, "If the wounds were on your body, would you question seeing a healer?" Loneliness is a wound, and it deserves our attention. There have been some really interesting and heartbreaking studies done on just how much we need connection. Some of you probably remember Dr. Harry Harlow in the 1950s. He took 8 baby monkeys and raised them in a nursery instead of with their natural mothers. And each baby got 2 mothers, one made out of cloth and one made out of wire. 4 babies had a milk bottle in with the cloth mother, and 4 had a milk bottle in with the wire mother. Unsurprisingly, the babies who had milk with the cloth mother never went in to see the wire mother. They completely ignored it. The babies who had the milk in with the wire mother would dash over to the bottle to nurse and then immediately dash back to their cloth mother. They would spend upwards of 17 hours each day on the cloth mother. Connection was as important to these babies as milk. More brutally, Frederick II, King of Germany and Holy Roman Emperor, did an experiment with infants. In the 11th century, he wanted to see what language children would speak if they grew up with no language, not even sign language. And so he instructed their caregivers to give the babies all the milk and physical care that they needed, but not to talk to them or touch them unless absolutely necessary. And we will never know what language those babies would have spoke, because they all died. They all died. Babies who do not receive connection die. Adults are not so special that we stop needing this connection. Internal pain is just as damaging as physical pain, damaging enough to put people at a 30% higher risk of early death. And researchers have shown that loneliness and rejection activate the same part of the brain as physical pain. Loneliness is painful because it hurts our brain the same way that being punched does. Where does it cross the line? Where does it go from being happy playing by yourself to being lonely? Part of the answer lies with the individual. If you're an introvert like my dad, then you can probably actually prefer a lot more alone time before it becomes loneliness. If you're an extrovert like me, then you probably get lonely a lot faster than someone who's more introverted. And of course, keep in mind that introversion and extroversion are not opposite things, they're a spectrum, and that people can lie a lot of different places on that spectrum, and that where you lie on the spectrum will probably change a little bit depending on your circumstances. If you have a job that requires you to be around people a lot, you might need more alone time when you're not at your job. If you have a job where you're all by yourself all day, you might need more time with people in your time off. But even if you're a pretty serious extrovert, like me, someone who loves being in crowds, even for people like me, it's easier to be alone than with others. I may crave company, but I remember being a child and playing alone. I know that when I'm alone, things always go the way I want them to. When I'm alone, I make things just the way I want them and no one tells me otherwise. When I'm alone, I'm perfect. And I need people. Extroverts and introverts need people. The epidemic of loneliness has a lot of different symptoms. New studies are indicating that the #1 indicator of addiction, any kind of addiction, is probably a lack of connection. At Beit Shuvah, a Jewish rehab center about 5 miles away in Culver City, they have been saying this for years, that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. And they've been having success with that slogan for 30 years. Hate crimes, insomnia, even exaggeration, these are all symptoms of loneliness. It's not optional. We need to connect with other people, even though it's not as comfortable as being alone. We need the growth that comes from spending time around people. If I had never played with others as a child, I would have no idea how to share. If I had never played with others, I wouldn't be very good at regulating my anger. If I had never played with others, I wouldn't have learned how to speak kindly to other people, how to ask for what I want from them. I wouldn't have learned how to live in community in a way that was healthy and helpful. And this learning doesn't stop when we get older. In the last year, spending time with other people has taught me how to forgive in the face of pain. Spending time with people has taught me how to communicate what I believe clearly and coherently in a way that other people will understand. Spending time with other people has taught me just how extroverted I am and how to be in relationship with introverts in a way that respects their need for space and company. Spending time with other people in the past year has shown me the parts of my life that really aren't as bad as I think they are. Church is a place to do this. Church is one of the few places that adults can go to bump up against the people around them. Literally, don't elbow your neighbor. Church is a playground for adults. We have silly fights. We argue over whose toy this is. We debate whose parent is cooler and which person's idea is best. We play. We laugh and cry and grow in a place where it is safe to mess up. In a place where we work really hard to talk to one another when we don't like what someone is doing. We are a community. And this is a place for us. A place to grow, to try and fail and try again. A place for us to explore emotions and interpersonal relationships. It's a place to explore our ideas about the world, about who we are and what our place is here and how it fits in with all the other kids. It's a place that offers some structure, some protection, a certain amount of wolf pack that is on your side. It's the place where you can get just enough people to know that you are not alone. I remember playing alone as a child and how satisfying it was. I also remember an event here a month ago where we sat in a room together in silence, just being with one another. I remember loneliness. I remember that chronic loneliness tends to shorten one's life. And I know that this is the place I want to be with my people. Look around you. No, seriously. Look around you. Look to one side. These are your people. Look to the other side, and behind you, these are your people. This is your playground. This is where we try and fail and live and love. And our playmates are here with us.